Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our last show of this week, a Thursday edition of Morning Cuppa Hockey, which is a presentation of Bet365. Make sure you download the app today, and as always, please play responsibly. And as always, Johnny will tell you that we are also presented by Proraso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care, made in Italy since 1948. Proraso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. Get 15% off at proraso-usa.com with promo code hockey15. Huts, we probably got to work on getting you a little package from Proraso, which you kind of have a nice shadow going on there. You probably have to put a pretty good razor to your face every once in a while, huh?
Every once in a while, buddy. I'm usually about a week or 10 days. Then I shave kind of beard off and on. I keep them guessing. You know what I mean? That the template for YouTube there, when it comes up, I got a pretty tough looking neck there. So I don't know, maybe we need the AI Photoshop me up a little bit, make me look cut the jaw a little tighter.
I think Vic purposely finds terrible pictures of people to put on there just to see if they're paying attention. So obviously no Johnny today, and I'm going to start the show today by asking you all if you had to guess. Okay, there's nothing wrong with Johnny, but I think, Vic, maybe you need to put a poll up. And I think people need to guess where is Johnny Boy today? Because today, we'll call it a personal day for our friend Jonny Lazarus, who will not be joining us for our last show of the week. So give us your best guess as to where Johnny Boy is and what Johnny Boy might be doing today, because I think we'll have to question the loyalty from our friend and wonder if this is really that important for him to be doing. So we will be joined by David Pagnotta today. I feel like we've had him a lot lately, Huts, but it is interesting to me how the second the Stanley Cup Finals ends, all of a sudden we get a couple of trades. Finally, a couple of new coaches get hired. We get the news yesterday that Bruce Cassidy has been given permission to talk to a team. We think that team is the Toronto Maple Leafs, from what we've been told, which makes you wonder even more about the Jim Hiller hire and kind of which direction the Toronto Maple Leafs are going. So I guess we'll just start quickly as we wait for DP to jump on here. Were you surprised at that news yesterday, Huts? And what is your reaction to all of it? Because I felt like I was on an island yesterday sitting here saying, why is everybody freaking out about this hire? It's not like he has some awful track record. The guy's barely been a head coach, and all we ever ask for is new coaches and more opportunities. And this guy hasn't been given 9 different opportunities to coach in the NHL.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I do like the fact that it's just not another guy that's been totally regurgitated and thrown in our face, and he's been through so many opportunities, because it's once you're in, right? We see it all the time when it comes to NHL coaching. I think the shock and awe factor is the fact that the Toronto Maple Leafs go out and they hire John Chayka and Matt Sundin and kind of shock us in that sense. So now we start the process of figuring out a head coach, where they let Craig Berube go, and you're in this process. And it's been in our face for so long about this coaching hire. And yesterday, Chayka talked about 25 different people that they met with, right, through interview processes and filtering through. And then they come out and the answer is Jim Hiller. And I think that is where it got a lot of shock and awe. And again, I think Leafs fans drag things through the mud and it gets over exploded out of the narrative of it. But that being said, it makes sense in that, he knows Auston Matthews, he knows William Nylander, he ran the offense, and these are successful years for these players under him. Now he's a head coach. He knows the media. So I do think it gets a bit of a pass, but I think the shock and awe for me is the fact that John Chayka went out and did this hire, where I think he's putting himself a little more exposed, where if you went with a more traditional guy, like if they were to get the Bruce Cassidy, if they were to get the best available guy, it gives them a little more time. So I think that is where the shock and awe comes in. It's not just like a household name. He's a guy that he's had success. He's done well, but his resume isn't as well groomed as we'd say the Laviolettes. And then obviously there was the talk of Joe Pavelski going kind of off the board. And I think this just shows where this team is at. They still need to win immediately.
Have you ever, so a lot of guys, when they stop playing, they have brief stints working for teams. did you ever work for a team? Like, have you ever gone through an interview for a job within a hockey ops position, a scouting position, anything like that? Because, you know, the one thing I'm always pretty quick to bring up, and this is more than just the Leafs conversation. We can look at this in any which way we go. I mean, this applies to the Babcock situation. This applies to any job openings, really. You know, Ryan Craig gets named head coach of Vegas yesterday. Have you ever gone through the interview process? Because that's always the bit of information that we don't have. We don't get to sit in on these interviews to hear how these guys do. And I remember being working in Chicago when Kyle Davidson was hired. You know, Stan was let go while I was working there. Kyle was interim. And then they put like a task force together. And I believe it was Marian Hossa, Eddie Olczyk, the owner. And I remember them going through the interview process and me kind of hearing snippets about it and getting a chance to like talk to Kyle and just how there's different styles. And so, you know, I'm curious if you've ever thought about it. Have you done it? Have you thought about it? Like, how would you handle one of these interviews?
You know, I think being yourself is most important too. Like, so I scouted 1 year for St. Louis when I first retired, but it wasn't like a grueling interview process by any means. It was kind of ran by Dave Alexander, their goalie coach, and he's also the coach for Hockey Canada because he's kind of Doug Armstrong's guy and he's had a lot of success. But it was more knowing my character already going into it and the way that I carried myself and my demeanor, and I think the way that I was used, you know, throughout that run. And now just talking with people who have made that adjustment. And one for me that I think of St. Louis where they value, so Robert Bertuzzo, a good friend of mine who scouts for them now, he just signed a contract and he's going to work the Central Division. And,
oh, cool.
And he's right involved in it. And his first year retired, he ended up, they brought him into development camp to talk. So you talk about that process and they told him, don't even talk about hockey, right? Like we want you to go in and talk about all the things that made you a good teammate off the rink. And I think that's the stuff for some of these organizations where the X's and O's and the systems, they are what they are, right? So during that interview process, you really want to get down to the meat of it of like who you are as a person and what you're going to do, I guess, with the rapport of your team. And I think guys like myself who were never like a star, you like extend your career a lot by doing that. And I think building a good framework of teammates and mentality. And I think that's something that's important during these. And it's a sport where there's the odd guy on the team that like you could be an asshole and do whatever, but you're so good. They take it like, hey, he's going to score 40. He can do whatever the hell he wants. But for the most part, it's still a sport where like you need to be a good person first. And I think that's priority when you talk about some of these hirings.
Well, and I just remember hearing a little bit about it when, you know, some of these coaching positions have come up more than maybe scouting or management positions. And we'll bring in David Pagnotta here in the next 30 seconds. But like I've heard there's very contrasting styles in these interviews where some people come in with a binder and a presentation and a lockstep. This is what I want to do with the roster. Or if you're a coach, this is how I plan. These are the lines that I want to use. This is the D zone. This is, you know, how we're going to improve our power play with video. And like I've heard some guys go into those interviews that dialed of details. And then I've heard there's the opposite. Some go in there, they look great, their hair looks great, and they go in and they charm the room, right? They sell you on themselves rather than selling you on the plan. And I'm not saying one way is better than the other. I'm always kind of just curious, like, you know, which one was it and which one won out? And generally speaking, we don't get those types of details from the manager or from the owners once they make these hires. Like Pelly never came out and gave us that information. And Kelly McCrimmon, you know, didn't tell us why Ryan Craig was the right guy for the job. And, you know, we don't learn these types of things, but I wish, like, and I doubt we'd ever get this, but man, wouldn't it be cool to have one of those like HBO 24/7s on the hiring of a coach or a general manager where the fans got to have a camera in the room and sort of, again, you could cut it so like secrets aren't given away, but people could really see how these different candidates go about these hirings. And I think that's a perfect segue to bring David in, because maybe we'll ask him if he heard any of these different things about interview styles throughout this process, because he obviously is really well plugged in. So great to have you back again this morning. I feel like we've been going to you quite a bit, so I appreciate it. But the news has been flowing, and I'm curious, like, if you've heard any of what we've been talking about. But, you know, I was just asking Carter, like, if he's ever interviewed for any of these types of jobs and sort of what maybe his style would be. And if this info ever works its way to you, DP, on like how these guys are going about their interviews.
There are a lot of guys that, depending on position, obviously, but there are a lot of guys that put a full package together. Like they will present it. It's almost like a presentation, not necessarily a job interview. So they'll come in, like Mike Gillis has done this a few times. He did this with the Maple Leafs as well. And a lot of people started to follow suit. I can't remember which team it was that he interviewed with, but he presented, this was going back a number of years. But he put together like a full presentation, like full PDF, PowerPoint presentation, listing a bunch of things, how he would, go about restructuring his organization. I think it was with Pittsburgh. He did the same thing with the Leafs when they were going through their hiring process for president and for GM, and put together this full presentation on every different element of the organization and where he thinks it needs to improve, how he would improve it, examples, all of that stuff. And a lot of people have kind of followed suit in that regard, maybe to not necessarily to that extent. But one of the things I've heard that for especially top tier positions, people are putting together full presentations on what their vision is for clubs. And that seems to have gone a long way for some people in terms of the hiring process. Now, not everybody gets it, gets the job, but going through that, we've seen as one element, one side of it in the interview process. That's not just the sit down back and forth. It's a full on, hey, we're going to have this conversation. I'm showing you examples. I'm illustrating my point even further. And this is how in depth I'm willing to go to, better the organization in this department and that department and so on.
Yeah, Pags. Obviously, it's been a situation here in the NHL, right, where we talk about the playoffs and the breakdowns, and then we're waiting for everything to drop, right? Like, you've been boots on the ground of the Cup finals, been so busy, and all these teams, it's almost like the Cup gets handed out, and now we get to where we need to be with these teams and decisions that are getting made. Then Jim Hiller slides in yesterday, which kind of shocked me, right? I guess I thought there'd be a little more of I thought they were going to wheel out the Lamborghini, but you know what I mean? They went to the old Toyota, and they made this decision. But there was names like Patrick Waugh, Joe Pavelski off the board. Why did they land on Hiller? Like, I know you're a Toronto guy, the ins and outs here. Like, it would kind of was a surprising hire to me. I think we're going to judge this team by their roster and what they do, and I don't want to pass judgment right now, but how do you land on Jim Hiller in this situation if you're John Chayka?
Yeah, I mean, LA is the team that I cover second most in the league with all the travel. So I know him from over there. Very analytically driven players type coach. And by that, I mean, in the players side, like he got along with a lot of guys. He created relationships with a lot of guys. There's an open door policy, type of scenario where if there's an issue, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. You may not win every argument, but I'm willing to at least have those conversations. The analytics portion of his coaching style clearly fit well with John Chayka and Sundin, but I would imagine more on Chayka's side from the analytics department. How he's gone about the style and structure in LA was based on the roster that he had and the ammunition that he had. I know everybody's pointing to his defensive structure and 1-3-1 that they used for a while that they got rid of in his last season. But that was based on the assets that he had to work with. And if you're looking at it just purely from, the numbers side of it, 600 record, it's not bad. How do you build off that? So the Leafs obviously had a conversation, and I'm with you guys. Like, that, it surprised the crap out of me too, because there was no inkling until the night before the hire that he was even remotely in the mix. Like, I think it was when Chayka indicated at the combine that he's talking to 55 candidates, or they've reached out to 55. I think people figured, okay, well, Hiller's probably one, but that's the extent of it. We hadn't heard anything else.
Can I just
So
throw
kudos.
one thing in? Can I just
Yeah.
throw one thing into there, DP? Like, I feel like they did a good job of misleading people because
100%.
there were people that were so sure that certain guys, and I don't even need to say the names because my victory laps are done, but it wasn't even just him. Like, they did a great job of misleading people and making everybody chase their tail. And then at the end of the day, they picked a guy none of us were talking about. If that's the way they're going to operate and they're going to keep they're going to have a tight-lipped scenario, I think that's probably a good thing, honestly, that they're not full of leaks, at least correct leaks. Maybe they're sending false flags out everywhere. So sorry to cut you off, but
Yeah, no. You're 100% right. They've done a phenomenal job in misdirection. Because it's not misinformation. It's, they spoke to these guys, but I'm only giving you this much. So phenomenal job in misdirecting everybody, myself included, in what the heck they've been doing. Not just in the coaching search, but even in the GM search. They did a pretty good job with that too. And then trickle this into here, and I'm sure it's going to translate to some of the roster stuff, as well. It's a little tougher to keep that close to the vest because you're dealing with other teams, but they definitely did a good job with that within the coaching search. And again, it wasn't until the night before on Tuesday or Monday, whatever the heck day it was, that it was like, oh, I think it was Tuesday night, that, oh, maybe this is a possibility. Nah, probably not. And then boom, in the morning, yeah, here's the press release at 9 a.m. But the connection there, the way he's able to adjust, Hiller, in incorporating the analytics side of the game with the structure that's in place or the system that he puts in place based on the assets that they have to work with, I think it was very appealing to Chayka and the management staff in Toronto, because it will be a different system than what he had to work with in LA. They have different weapons, they have different assets, and they have a different direction because they want to be more offensively driven from the back end out versus defensively minded. And that's not to say they're not going to be defensively focused, but the system that they want to put in place different than before, and with Hiller's ability to adjust in that regard, based on the assets that he has to work with. I mean, that again, appealing to Toronto, but that'll also be put to the test next season once all the pieces are in place. Because, Hutz, you're right. Like, there's going to be some more roster changes, a lot more roster changes for this, and we don't know what this team's really going to look like probably for another few weeks.
And as we kind of move towards the draft, and this will probably kind of be the last thing I have to talk about with when it comes to the Maple Leafs. Hutz, obviously, if you have anything else, jump in and add it. But I heard the guys on Game Notes talking to, of course now, Bakula, or what? How do you say his last name? Jason Bakula, and they were talking about. They were talking about, so they're talking about McKenna and the number 1 overall pick, and he's got Stenberg ahead of McKenna, but he says they're basically neck and neck with each other. And he had a really good comment, and he said, first off, think about the analytics of both players. And I have no idea what the analytics say. I can't imagine McKenna has super, super strong analytics, but again, that's a total guess. Stenberg being a Swede, again, my guess would be his analytics are probably better. It's more of a nod towards Stenberg than a knock against McKenna. But, they said, let's just say McKenna's another version of Mitch Marner, which, again, like, we can't say that's necessarily a bad thing. Mitch Marner's a 100-point scorer in the National Hockey League. Like, he just tore apart the NHL playoffs and led it in points. Like, so we could say whatever we want about the guy, but those are just facts. Would it make sense to do something different? Because if McKenna gets you a Marner and this team has struggled with that archetype of player, does Stenberg then become more on the forefront? If a guy like Chayka is leaning more into the analytics, obviously Judd Brackett came over as well. I think his history has a lot of wins, also has a lot of losses, like anybody in those positions. So do you think they're looking at it different than we think they're looking at it? Because I think we all just assume it's a foregone conclusion that Gavin McKenna will be the number 1 overall pick in the draft.
Yeah, and I think overall, long-term, the upside is higher on McKenna's side of it than it is Stenberg. Stenberg's more immediate impact based on the fact that, or the belief, based on the fact that he, played overseas. He played in Sweden. He played, pro over there. So he's more acclimated to this type, or it's an easier adjustment, I should say, for him than it would be for a guy like McKenna. And yes, there are similarities to his game to that of Mitch Marner's, minus the defensive element. But from the offensive side, but there are the other elements of this team, the other changes that are going to be made to this team. Wouldn't you want to have that 100 type point player on that roster? Yeah. Now, I'm not saying he's going to pull that off right away, but if you have the ability to bring in that caliber player and then adjust the other elements of your roster, because it wasn't like the lack of success wasn't because of the lack of offense. It was the lack of all the other elements that make you a good Stanley Cup contending team that Toronto just didn't have. And if you have the ability to bring in a guy who's that caliber type player on your first line, that's going to get Auston Matthews going again, and that complements Knies and that complements your power play, while bringing the right intangible pieces to the rest of your roster and reshaping the blue line and getting more physical on your fourth and being more having a three-pronged type of third line would presumably make you overall better, and you get them at a fraction of the cost for at least 3 years. And I think the elements for Toronto are factoring that in, along with the marketability of the player. And as soon as I've said this from the get-go, I think we talked about this too. As soon as we saw those jerseys roaming around downtown Toronto with McKenna on the back, like the day after the draft lottery, I think that played a little bit of a fact. I know that Keith Pelly, the president of MLSE, is going, I'm not touching this. This is you guys. I don't want to meddle with anything. Okay. As soon as he saw those jerseys, there was probably a light bulb that went off. Going, yeah, I know we're not in the business of selling jerseys, but pick the damn kid.
Yeah, it's so important. And again, I know, Colby, you talk a lot about your time working for the Hawks. And I remember in 2013 and 2012, I played there. That was during the Cup run. I was a third goalie. And some of my old man still talks about to this day. He's like, how much money did they make off the Kane and Taves jerseys, like during that era, that run, where it's just like there is a lot of money to be made off the rink and there's so much that goes into it. And Toronto's obviously suiting up, right? We see the Joseph Wall trade. We've seen some pieces be moved out, and obviously they're setting themselves up for stuff. Now with this hire for the Toronto Maple Leafs, what happens in Edmonton now with Babcock, with this investigation and everything going on with him? Does this speed things up, or where are they at in that investigation? Because that's kind of the team that's in there. If the Leafs are in their Auston Matthews window, the bigger window we're worried about here is this McDavid window at Edmonton.
Yeah, because Toronto's, let's make the playoffs and improve from there, get better from there. Edmonton is, we need to win the Cup. Pretty simple. And that's the mandate from the owner. Mike Babcock is their guy, assuming the NHL signs off on it. And that's what they're waiting for. Internally, they feel, at least some people that I've talked to, they feel like it's going to happen. It's going to happen at some point, in the not too distant future. I reached out to the league a few times to a few people, and the consensus was, we're going through the motions. It's done when it's done. Like, it's not a cop-out answer. It's just, we don't know because we haven't put a timeline on it. We need to make sure we're doing the right work and investigating this properly. Now, properly in short order, because a full-on investigation of this magnitude can go on for several months. But this is a scenario where at least the Oilers feel this is going to be, something done soon, and that they move on, that they'll be moving forward with Babs as the head coach. And I've been pretty adamant about this point too. I don't care who the coach is, because who's your goalie? How are you restructuring your decor? Who's your 3C? What the hell does your fourth line look like? And you want another winger to play with Connor. Who's that going to be? There's so many holes on this roster that it almost doesn't matter the importance of the coach. Obviously it does, but I'm talking grand scheme of things. You can bring in the best coach in the world. You can bring in Scotty Bowman and Toe Blake in their prime. With this roster, the way it's currently constructed, It's not going to matter. You have to fill the right holes, and that's what I'm most curious to see what the heck the Oilers actually end up pulling off here. Where does Darnell Nurse go? How do they replace that element on the blue line? How do they improve the blue line? Which goalie are they getting? And so on and so on and so on. So, yes, the coach is important. Obviously, I'm not diminishing that. But the deficiencies in the roster, until those are addressed, I mean, that's going to judge. A lot of people will be able to judge properly at that point whether this team is realistically a cup contender next season or not, even with the two best players in the world.
I made a comment yesterday that picked up some steam on social media, and of course Vic did what he always does, and he found the juiciest 15 seconds of what we were talking about. But I guys, tell me. Yeah, for sure. I have no issue with it. Listen, if it comes out of your mouth, it's fair game, and it just is what it is. But I'll ask both you guys, am I being dramatic to say that I believe there was this little window over the last couple of seasons where players were way more interested in going to Edmonton? I had friends, some that come on this show, say to me, you know what? I'd go there. I'd waive to go play with those guys, to have a chance to win. I've been asking around over the last, basically since Babcock's name surfaced, and I have to tell you, I've yet to get a single guy that still feels that way. Now, it's a very small sample size. I've talked to 7 or 8 people about it. And I asked an agent about it too, one agent. I believe that this makes the window of players' willingness to waive and go to Edmonton, or their eagerness to get to free agency to go to Edmonton. You're always going to have players. There's always going to be players that will go. But I'm talking about any of these bigger name guys that truly control their own destiny, or any of these guys that are over the last couple of seasons, we have seen players, Arvidsson, and I know some of them haven't necessarily worked out in Edmonton, but guys have wanted to go there. Guys have taken a little bit less. Guys have been, hey, on my free agency deal, Skinner went there. I know it didn't work out, but you've seen it. I think this Mike Babcock thing just changes all of that. I think now you're going to get people that have no other option instead of people that are raising their hand wanting to go there. Do you guys think I'm being overly dramatic with that, or do you think that there's some truth to that? Go ahead, Pags.
No, there's definitely truth to it. I've reached out to some people as well, and I've gotten 2 different answers. I've gotten one being just a straight up, I'm not, that's for me. And then I've got, again, others that are going, well, let me see in 2 weeks. Because guys want to see what this team is going to look like.
Right.
When the captain and the best player in the world comes out and says, whatever the heck he said, I can't remember what he said definitively, but I'm paraphrasing, we're not good enough. That's a pretty good indicator of what this roster is. And with that, everybody knows that they need to make improvements. We just talked, I mentioned it 2 seconds ago. What are those improvements going to look like? In 2 weeks, we're going to have we should have a clearer indication as to what this team actually is going to look like. And I think some guys are curious to see what that's going to look like, what the next 2 weeks are going to entail for the Oilers, and what holes are going to get filled. And if some of those holes are already filled, and now it's looking like, okay, wait a second, now this roster is it's coming together, it's looking like a legit cup contender again. Then some guys are going, well, yeah, because now I could be this piece or I can be that piece, and I could help put this over the edge. So I think there are guys that are still a little bit hesitant, even with Babcock there, just to see what the rest of this team's going to look like. Where you're right, there are other guys that I've talked to that are like, nah, they're off my list for now.
What do you think, Hutz?
And I think that's a factor, though, too. And again, I think another takeaway would be you look at you brought his name up, Arvidsson. Look at the success he had leaving there, right? He goes to Boston this year and has a great year, kind of rejuvenates his career. And it's not always going to fit just because there's 2 good players. It's different if you're riding shotgun and you're in a situation to succeed. So I think that's a calculated factor when you're looking at this selfishly from the inside out. You're like, well, what's this going to do for my career when I can stay protected if you are in a better situation? Because there is that risk reward factor, right? And that's something that I was exposed to when I think about my free agency. I could have went to Boston and played with Tuukka Rask as his backup, but I went to Buffalo because I wanted to start minutes. And I wanted, as I sit here as a 40-year-old retired media working guy, I threw my hat in the ring and took a chance. But not everyone wants to be exposed to that, Pegs. And I think that's the situation that they're in now because of this run and now hiring a coach like Babcock. Similar, we talk about Tortorella coming in, where he's hired, they fire Cassidy, they bring in Torts, and it's like, you don't have a choice in Vegas. He's your coach because it's during the season. Now they hire Ryan Craig, where that sex appeal of Vegas is still there. If Torts stays on, like maybe that changes people's opinion of going to Vegas and being that addition to try to push them over the top. And I kind of wanted to use that to segue into the Ryan Craig topic of Vegas. It kind of felt like he was the guy. And now we talk about all these other teams that have to go out and hire guys from, Jim Hiller or Cassidy, or, you go around shopping Peter DeBoer. What made Ryan Craig the right fit? Was it just familiarity with the team and like he's been there for so long, or what he's done in the AHL to come up with this group that's ready? We always talk about retooling. This group's still ready to win. Vegas is still going to be good next year. Can Craig be the guy?
Oh, yeah. Well, and then there's he was on this club as an assistant coach in their first 6 years, goes for the last 3 in Henderson, gets acclimated to those responsibilities. The first couple of years I think they missed the playoffs both years. This past season was overall a good one for them. But the transition there was set when they let Cassidy go. And, I think they let Craig know that this was the plan. And, Kelly McCrimmon talked about this yesterday, saying that, we didn't want to bring in, Ryan Craig in the middle of the season at this point. It wouldn't have been fair to him. We wanted to bring in somebody else, which was the plan with Torts. But they get Craig in, 3-year contract, solid money at that level. For a guy that's, again, got familiarity with the organization's structure and overall system. And they obviously feel that it's going to be a compliment and an easy transition at the NHL level. With the group that they've got, because you're right, their window is still open. This isn't a scenario where now suddenly Vegas has to regress. That's not what the owner wants, and that's sure as hell not what Kelly McCrimmon wants either. So this team is going to be an intriguing one moving forward, but they still feel that within the coaching staff and at the coaching ranks that Ryan Craig's the right guy that's going to lead this team moving forward with whatever additional changes they make to that roster.
Ryan Craig has been a captain basically his entire career in the American League, his career in the WHL. He had some small, some stints in the National Hockey League, couple of games here and there. So he's familiar with it. His best run was in 08-09 with Tampa. I'm looking now. He had 06-07. He played 72 games. So it's kind of early in his career where he had the most NHL success, and then he was an up and down guy. Look, I played against him in the American League quite often, actually, and especially in Springfield. He was their captain. It's the worst argument I ever had with a coach in my entire career. It happened to be with Butch Cassidy, because Ryan Craig ran me down so hard in a game, and I was getting close to the red line, but I didn't quite make it, and I knew I was going to get blasted, and I knew if I dice it, I'm going to get my lunch eaten. If I don't, I'm basically either way here, I'm going to get my lunch eaten. And he ran me down so hard in a game. Elbow pad moved, smashed my elbow right on the ice, like the worst feeling ever. Come back to the bench. I got Butch just barking at me about not making the play. Kevin Dean had to get between Butch and I. Because when you get hurt and then someone yells at you, that's like the worst thing ever. You're dealing with both of those things. But I just remember Ryan Craig being an absolute nightmare to play against of a guy. He put up points in the American League, but he was just a mean 200-foot responsible guy who played heavy, didn't take any shortcuts. So I think you kind of know, okay, this is an honest player. He's probably going to have that sort of mentality as a coach. And look, I'm happy to see a young guy get an opportunity. He's worked, obviously, with Pete DeBoer. He's worked with some really good coaches, right? And he's had some really good runs with some smart guys. So I good for him. Do you think if Vegas wins, they would have extended Torts, or do you think this was happening no matter what? Because it seems like it was no matter what, right?
Yeah, it was. When the Cup started, I thought, okay, if they win, Torts has got to be back. and they'll just prolong, Ryan Craig. And then as we got to, what was it, game 5, just before game 5, I was talking to somebody and they were just like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like it's tied at 2, whether we win this or lose this, he's jumping in. So the plan was in place from when they basically decided to let Cassidy go. And that was, I think, and I'm almost positive that message was relayed to Ryan Craig as well with those instructions of, you're our guy next season, whether we win this thing or not. And hopefully we get back in it. We go on a decent run and whatnot. They end up in the Cup final 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup. So solid run indeed, but I think the plan was in place there. And other teams are firming up their coaching positions too. There's a lot of guys that are and were on expiring deals going into next season, and we're starting to see that get re-upped. Tourney has a 1-year extension beyond the 1 year that he's got his last year. So he's got 2 more years on his contract. Carberry just I don't think it's signed. I believe it's agreed to and it hasn't been filed, but he's got his extension in place, as I reported yesterday, in Washington. So he's locked in for a number of years there with the Caps as well. The Habs want St. Louis locked in. Warsawski and San Jose, they're working on that too. So you're seeing a lot of teams getting a little bit of housekeeping done on the coaching side of things too, not just on the roster element.
Yeah, and I think that's an important factor now as we recollect ourselves, some of these teams, right? And I think the Cup gets given out, then it's like a crash course to free agency in the draft. And for Vegas, right, like being that close, and I heard Kelly McCrimmon talk about it yesterday, talking about a few key moments like game 2 and they have a 2-0 lead and how close they were to score. Mitch Marner hits a crossbar. Jack Eichel hits a crossbar in a certain moment where, that series could have easily went the other way as well, like how close they are. Now they got some tough decisions to make, like Rasmus Anderson, he spoke and he just talked about the whirlwinds of trades and head coaches and Claude Lemieux, the connection there. And then Pavel Dvoriev, what happens with those 2 numbers? Because those are guys that I'm very interested in. Kobe's smiling because I was practicing saying Pavel's name because it's been eating me up all year. So, but the factor is what do they do now? Because Vegas is still legit going to be a powerhouse. And I give Carter Hart a lot of credit. I think he's only going to get better next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Dorofeev is coming off 37 goals. He got 35 the year before. If they believe he can maintain that 30-goal pace, the way that they play, alongside Jack Eichel at the top line, Barbie on the other side, then you hold on to him because the money's there, right? I know they have $5 million in cap space as it's shown for next season, but you add 8.8 because of Petro, and assuming Petrangelo's done still, which is still the belief, you throw him on season-ending LTIR, you've got your money for Dorofeev. So now, that being said, if Detroit and Vegas are serious in their discussions involving Dylan Larkin, do the Wings insist on having Dorofeev in there? And if you're Vegas, you have to decide, again, do you believe he's going to be a consistent 35 goal scorer for another X amount of years? Or is it based on our system that makes him so good and we'd be that much better with Larkin in the mix, as an example? So that's where that conversation has to revolve around. The belief is that there's something there. There has been something there with Anderson in Vegas, and that they've been waiting to make that all official, and they got to finalize things and whatnot. How that looks now, I'm not exactly sure. Anderson talked about needing, with everything going on this season, with what happened, with respect to Claude Lemieux, his agent. He even acknowledged it earlier in the week that maybe I just need to take a step away from hockey for a little bit to kind of clear the mind and go from there. Whether that involves rethinking his desire to stay in Vegas or not, I don't know. He wasn't overly clear on that. But you got to imagine that there's going to be a little bit of housekeeping that has to happen financially. And the biggest factor there is Adin Hill. And you touched on it. Hart's going to get better next season. Hill's got a $6.25 million cap hit. He's won a cup. He's got a little bit of don't trade protection. That's the low-hanging fruit, clear cut. That's the guy you move to free up money. and that's probably going to be part of the discussion point that they're going to have with how this goalie market's going to form. Like, this is an intriguing goalie market right now because we don't know what the heck's going on with Florida and Bobrovsky yet. It looks like he's going to free agency, but Florida's already kicked the tires going back to last month on Connor Hellebuck. And we know that Jordan Binnington is also a target for them. So, you know, if they realize that Bob's not going to be their guy because he wants term at 38, then do you shift and go to Binner? Do you go to Hellebuck? And then once that gets figured out, whether Bob stays or goes and they bring in another goalie, then the rest of the market can become a little bit clearer, unless teams just don't want to wait. But like Edmonton, they got to figure out their goaltending situation. There are other goalies that are out there that, you know, teams are looking to move to, not just Hill. You have Montembeault in Montreal. We just mentioned Binnington. You know, if Hellebuck is moved out of Winnipeg, who steps in? You know, as much as they want to address other elements of their roster, and moving him would probably, I mean, it would get you a hell of a haul, but it's going to basically, you know, you're going to check boxes off in other areas of your team. You're going to need a goalie there. Is that a place for Hill, for example? You know, so the goalie carousel is, to me, a very, very underrated right now, intriguing one. And I think it's going to be propped up under the spotlight a little bit more here, because we're going to start hearing more of these discussions as the days get closer to the draft and to free agency.
Yeah. I think that's what I was saying on the show yesterday. I think the draft might have some real fireworks, because I actually am in the camp of thinking there's probably multiple teams in the top 5 or 10 that might move, whether they move up, they move down. I really think more than ever we're going to see that this year, because there's so many guys that are rated the same. Like, there's so many players in this top 10 that you're kind of getting a similar thing, whether you grab them at 3 or 7 and their name is X versus Y. Like, they're probably the same type of player with the same type of ceiling. So, Pags, before we let you go, I just want to ask you a quick yes or no, and you can expand if you want. But the reports yesterday that Cassidy was given permission to speak to a team, we felt like Toronto radio, you know, Kipper and Bourne made it sound like that was the Toronto Maple Leafs. Is that confirmed, or is that just speculation at this point?
I mean, I was told it was Toronto as well. So,
okay.
But I think there's, it was middle of playoffs. It wasn't middle of the Cup final. So, just clarity. I just want to, you brought it up, so I just want to clarify that, because I know online people are going, it was middle of the Cup final. Excuse me. It was at some point middle of the playoffs. I think around the 3rd round. So, I mean, the Leafs clearly went in a different direction, but I was told it was Toronto.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's good to know. That's kind of what we thought. So, Pags, we appreciate it. You are going to be a very busy man the next 2 weeks. Everybody's kind of wrapping up, and I feel like it's game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals for you now, bud. I feel like you are going to have a busy few weeks here of not kicking your feet up at the beach, but being on that cell phone and keeping your ears to the ground. So we'll circle back. We promise.
Bring it on. Yeah, it's going to be fun. The espresso machine is going to be on high alert here for the next little while. I can tell you that much.
The Babcock news dump is coming tomorrow at like 9:59 p.m. So right. Your Friday night, whatever Friday night plans you have, I would couch them, because that news dump is coming.
I can't wait. The Friday one, always very entertaining. So what's that? That's 7:59 Edmonton time. That sounds about right.
Yep. Yeah. All right, Pags. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Pags.
All right, later, guys.
Hutsy, we've got a pretty interesting comment here in the chat that I'm almost positive I know the answer to this question, but New York Marine is asking about when a player switches agents, like Vinny Trocheck is in the middle of his contract and he switched to Brisson. My understanding, the way it works is no matter what, you finish paying your agent out on that contract. Like, that new agent will not earn money unless they go out and find you a new marketing deal or some sort of content deal of some sort. But they won't earn money until your next contract. I'm speaking that correctly, right, Hutsy?
You are speaking that correctly, buddy. That is how it works. The contract that you sign with that team, the term, whatever it is, unless I'm sure there's some sort of word if the agent was to do something that, you could fire him for, like for
like
legit
cause.
reasons.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. That would like be held up in a court of law. You got to pay him, because I thought about that. Like, well, Jordan really well. My agent, Edge Sports Management, represented me. So I always joke around that he always said that I was like the most low key guy ever when I signed my contracts. And, I always had the opinion, like, you got to play, you have to get the job done. I think at times before I was in the NHL, my agent was more important, just getting me conversations and getting me in. But once you're in the NHL, man, there's no hiding. Like, you got to get the job done, and you got to pay him out. And I remember signing the deal and then realizing how much I had to pay him over the next 3 years. And I was like, man, if you get a good player, you can ride him for a long time. And obviously Vinny's not happy.
You know what? And I think that it was a little bit different some of those years, because I feel like the agency business, we're starting to kind of see some monopolies where it wasn't like that before. Look at all the small agencies are getting offered deals by CAA and Newport and some of these, I know Wasserman just changed their name, right? I think they're called like the hockey agency now, because the Wasserman founder's name was in the Epstein files or something. I think I might be misquoting that story. So obviously, chat, you hold us accountable to everything, but I'm pretty sure Wasserman's name is different now. But there used to be a lot more agencies now. A lot of the smaller mom and pop shops have kind of been bought up by the big dogs. They've bought their client rosters, they've brought them in, and they've brought them sort of into the umbrella where they're saying, look, we can offer you more than just contract negotiation. We have social media teams and marketing teams and this and that. Amal is telling us in the chat the new name is The Team. So thank you for the assist there, Amal. We appreciate that. Always executive producing from the top rope. So we love to see that. And Howdy, it's David is giving us a little bit more insight into that. So, I think that's how that works, New York Marine. It's a great question. And I think the other thing, Hutsy, that came up yesterday, people were wondering and pissed off when they realized that the Vegas Golden Knights were not even paying John Tortorella to be their coach for the last 6 weeks or whatever, 10 weeks that he was coaching for them, 12 weeks, whatever the date was, because he was still under contract with the Philadelphia Flyers. And the way that works is when you have time left on your deal and a new team hires you, your new team, you only have to pay the difference. And so, the Flyers were still paying him the $4.5 million that he was earning to be a Flyers head coach. Vegas wasn't paying him nearly that much. So there's actually no money exchange. Vegas flew him out. They're putting him up. He's probably getting per diem. But the Flyers have been the ones paying John Tortorella for the last 3 months. And that's just going to make people even more angry about the way Vegas does business, man. They're just a step ahead in all this stuff.
It is. And again, I think the comments yesterday from Kelly McCrimmon were great. And you look at the success that they've had and how they've become this evil empire. And I think Jack did a great job on the mic as well. A friend and teammate of mine who I saw him go through his darkest days in Buffalo, and he's standing there telling you, like, everybody wants to play in Vegas. And I could second that, like, just from being in the league and the situation where they're at. Like, this isn't a place that isn't on teams no trade list. Like, people want to play in Vegas. They've done a good job. And whether you like the way they do business or not, right, there's a lot of things that happen that are uncomfortable, and it puts you in a situation to win and be there. Just like I think the landscape of hockey has changed. When we talk about the cap and we talk about this year's free agency, there's going to be a lot more trades and a lot more moving parts. How often did we see a captain of the team like Dylan Larkin asking for a trade? Like, the NHL landscape is changing, and I think we have to rethink the way we view it and understand that the traditionalism of it is changing. And I think the Vegas Golden Knights are a bit ahead of the curve, whether it's a Tortorella factor, whether it's getting Carter Hart, whether it's, making these moves and moving guys out. And I think that is just the norm. And in a league that is built on parity, the league is built on a salary cap, and we want to have everybody's good. You have to find ways to work around if you're going to be consistently competitive. And I think right now, the Vegas Golden Knights are that team, I think, to fit that mold.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that kind of, is unnoticed is all of the extracurriculars and all of the other things that some organizations do really well when you get traded, how they deal with your family, how they help you find places to live, all the perks that we don't necessarily see. You don't know about it until either you go play there or your friend goes and plays there. I mean, I'll never forget when Shaddy signed with the New York Rangers and like they first started coming into New York, and him and his wife, like the treatment that they were given and the carpet that was rolled out for them. And from what they explained to me was that they did this for everyone. It didn't matter if you were a fourth line guy that just got picked up off of waivers or you were their big free agent signing. Like, they treated you with a different level of extracurricular opportunities and car services and realtors and nannies and all of the things that can really just make your life a little bit easier when you go to a new place. And I think, I remember Ryan Reeves telling me, and I think Vegas got in trouble for this, like the first year or two, that the owner was letting the players use his private jet in the offseason. Now they were paying some, like, hey, you're going to pay for the fuel. It wasn't just here, it's free, because I think that would have been actually illegal to do within the CBA. But they were letting the guys rent the jet to go to places, giving them like really low level fees on it. And he just like really wanted to give the players and take care of the players. So I saw Jack's media availability too. I think that Jack Eichel is the perfect level of alpha male that you need to be to run a hockey team. You're confident, and your confidence sometimes shows in a cocky way. Sometimes it shows in a confident way. I think your stubbornness and almost confidence and arrogance all blend together like they need to in order to be the level that he is. And so I have no issues with how they're doing it. And I think, again, players want to go somewhere where they know they never have to worry about a rebuild. I mean, veteran players don't want to take part in that kind of thing. Ask Dylan Larkin, his whole career has been a rebuild. So now he wants to go to places that don't give a shit about the future and they live in the now. So that is becoming, more and more intriguing to players of looking at the teams on the list right now are teams that aren't caring about the future. Does Minnesota care about the future right now?
No, now they want to win right now. The window's now. And again, I think that is a factor with a lot of these teams. And I think that like your comment about Jack like hits home with me because, the 3 years I spent with Eichel, and arguably I was fortunate enough to play on a lot of different teams and like be around a lot of great players. Jack was the one that was like a leader, but also like an ass. Like at times, like I always used to joke, like me and him were really good friends. I don't think he was anyone's friend when he tied his skates up. Like when he put his skates on, he transformed into a superstar, and he played that role in a sport where we traditionally didn't have that, right? Like where I came from a team with like Shea Weber, where it was like he led a lot differently. Like Jack led, like if his gloves weren't good, his gloves weren't good. He wanted superstar treatment, but he put it up every single night. He was a difference maker. And I think that's something that it's not palatable for a lot of people because of the way that we've always traditionally viewed hockey, right? Like the way we grew up, it was always like, what are we doing for the betterment of the team, right? And I think something that changed my perspective of that in hockey, because I was raised blue collar. Like I'm from Thunder Bay. You see Jordan Staal, like the most like wear it on his sleeve captain of all time, possibly, right? Like, similar to Rod Brindamore, like those two were like built to be each other's captain and head coach. But then Jack is a different kind of feel for that. And I think something that changed my perspective of that when I was in the minors in Rockford and I was going up to Chicago was Nicholas Chalmerson. He signed an offer sheet with another team, and then the Hawks had to sign him. And I was bouncing around. I was their number 3. You're in this situation where like, you don't know what's up or down, right? Am I going to make it? Am I not? And one thing that he always promoted to me is like, you're your most independent contractor. Like at the end of the day, like you wear that jersey for that team, but there's going to be, now there's the team you're on, there's 31 other teams that could potentially want you. And I think at times there needs to be a little bit of selfishness in it. And I don't think from a fan base, a traditionalist, we don't love to hear that or see it. But with the Vegas Golden Knights and where they're at, it's something that they understand. And to be competitive in this market, it's hard to go 10 years without having a good team, or Buffalo 14 years, where you want to have that moral compass, but at the same time, you need players that are like wanting to win and kind of have that chip on their shoulder to be that superstar to push you over the top, in my opinion, Copes.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always exceptions to every rule. There's always guys like Patrice Bergeron, who's like the most humble superstar, and there's guys, but even, Zdeno Chara, like Chara he was a different kind of leader than a guy like Jack Eichel. But he was not a walk in the park. Like Z was not arrogant or cocky. He really didn't. His confidence never bled into arrogance or cockiness, but he was like the most demanding teammate you could ever have. Like his expectations for guys were to play at his level, which wasn't reasonable or realistic because he was a Zdeno Chara. He's a Hall of Famer. So these guys all have their own styles. And I think Jack Eichel has owned his, he's grown into his. I met Jack when he was at BU and didn't really know him all that well. And then again, we spent some quality time together in Hawaii 4 or 5 years ago where I really did get to know him. And I got to know his now wife, who, I think is a rock star of a human being, but I totally, I love him. I think he's an awesome guy. He's a good human being. I think that when you get that side of guys like that, I think it makes you realize why they're so great once their skates go on, because they just have this like shift in their mentality of like, okay, like, yes, we might have been sitting there yesterday, but like now get on my back, get on my page, and I'm going to lead the way. And I think he's the type of guy that he doesn't take shortcuts in the way that he plays, so he can be that way, right? He is not asking you to play in a way that he won't, and he hasn't, and he can't. And I think that's there where you start going down the pathway of these leadership styles. This is why Jack Eichel is perfect for Vegas. This is why Jack Eichel, I still think there's a chance they move off of Stone this summer. I really do. I think the way they operate, they're looking at Stone and they're thinking his best days are behind him. And if he has value, I don't think they'll think twice about cutting bait from him. I don't think they will. Nope. So I think if they're to do that, part of that is that they know they have a captain in waiting who can lead that team. So I think Vegas I think we're going to have Vegas fireworks over the next couple of weeks. Like I'm not saying I want Stone to get traded. I have great respect for him, but man, they're savages. He has 1 year left on his deal. 1 year. If you want to free up a bunch of money to bring your 37 goal scorer back, look no further than Mark Stone. I'm no inside info. And I've said that though now, and people have pushed back on it and said there's no way they walk away from their captain. Why wouldn't they? They walk away from anyone when they feel like they need to.
Yeah. And again, that's where I circle back to what Charleston taught me as a young player. You got to be selfish at times. And I think something that is a hard skill set to manage is like internal arrogance. And I say that, I don't know if that's the right way to frame it, but like something I struggled with was like the hesitation to be good, the hesitation to be the man, right? Like where like when you play in college, right? Like we played against each other. You come in kind of green, and then all of a sudden you start to get this. Now you're like, how do I gain this internal confidence to go in any tough situation and like be the man? And then you get to the American League and you slowly work your way through. But then there's certain players that just kind of hit the ground running when it comes to the NHL level. And it's like a player that I always think of as Andrew Shaw. It's almost like he didn't understand how small he was and how like he just came in with this like, and I feel like that's
abandonment.
Yes, right? Like where for me, there was a lot of those like suppressing of demons of like, oh my God, I have to play at MSG against Henrik Lundqvist. Like I'm trying to sleep. You start thinking about all these things where there's other players that just naturally have that ability. And I think that's something that's changed. And we talk about this younger generation coming in and being like Cutter Gauthier being like, I'm not playing there. Like, I'm going to wait till I go there. And that's the new age of player, the new age of power that is like possessed by these guys. And I think Vegas just embodies that. And I think they're in the way. And again, like to your Mark Stone point, I think if something is taught us about Vegas, anything is on the table.
Yeah.
Anything is on the table that's going to make them better immediately. And if you're a lifer and if you're a guy you're going to get a statue built outside the rink, like, well, that's too bad. You're not helping our team in immediate future. We move on from you.
And Josh Miller took the words out of my mouth here. And, he said, I think there's give and take. For every Vegas, there's a Carolina. And I do agree. It just shows you that there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah, for sure.
And you've now got two teams that have one cup in the last 10 years. Both teams have the same amount of cups, and they've gone about it in such a greatly different way. And I think the contrast is important. I think there's different approaches. There's different types of people. Like, think of Eric Tulsky and then think of Kelly McCrimmon. I don't think you could have two people that have the same job, one of 32. There's not a lot of those guys in the world. So it's a small percentage. Those two guys couldn't be any more different. Like, I would love to see Kelly McCrimmon and Tulsky sit down, have a beer together. What the hell are those two going to talk about, Huts? Like, could you think of more of the odd couple?
Yeah, they are. And again, it goes to show you, but I also think the factor of Carolina, and I get it, it's a great point, but I also think Rod Brindamore's a unicorn. Like, he's an absolute unicorn with the way that he treats his players and the way that he propels that. And like, to my point earlier I made, I think him and Jordan Staal, the way that he carries himself is like the perfect uniform movement of, like, when Rod Brindamore leaves the dressing room, it's not like, oh, coach is gone, this guy, why are we doing this? No, you have like the alignment between coach and player is so high. And I think that's a big time factor when we talk about these coaching hires, where, like, if it is Babcock, right? Like, if he's not aligned with McDavid and Draisaitl, like, it's bound to fail. Like, you need to have that built on stable ground, just like Jim Hiller. Like, if he leaves the room and Matthews and Nylander are like, oh, this is what's Easton Cowan going to do? He's going to be like, hey guys, coach said this. No, you need your leadership group. And I think to that point is, like, John Cooper always made that conversation. He's like, I have the easiest job in the world. Like, I come in and I tell the starting lineup, I leave, and I know the boys got it. And I think that's a big factor, is when the room and the players' personalities you have in that leadership group run the table, because I think that's how you create a winner as well.
Yeah, no, like, those are such good points. Like, they really are. And it's why this makes it, what it does, right? And this makes it, as interesting, and how we have these different results and these different ways of doing things here. So, last thing I want to ask you about before we kind of end today's show, there was a trade yesterday. It involved one of your old teams, the Buffalo Sabres, traded defenseman Michael Kesselring, and the 27th pick in the draft to San Jose for number 20. Now the Sharks have a 26-year-old defenseman, big guy, he's 6'4", 6'5", something in that range. Has had some good moments, like he's I don't know if we're 100% sure exactly, who and what he is. Like, I feel like we've seen a lot of flashes of it, but does this sort of outline that Mike Grier is going to start getting aggressive? Does Macklin Celebrini push the timeline up on their rebuild? Because I said yesterday, I believe players that are saying they want to go to established superpowers would actually be willing to waive to go play with Macklin, because of the way that they've built, and because he is a Crosby level superstar player, type of talent, Macklin Celebrini. So just kind of thoughts on the trade, and if you think that if there's any truth to what I'm saying in my idea that players would want to go to San Jose a lot, maybe quicker than they'd want to go to Chicago. And even though I think Chicago's a great place to be, it's a great organization to be a part of.
No, I'm with you there, and I think there is sex appeal to San Jose now because of what Celebrini's been able to do, and like where the future of this team is going. And I think for Mike Grier being able to go get an NHL defenseman that they think he can fit right in and play, because of the way the playoffs went for Kesselring, right? Like, not being a big part of it. And then you look at the Sabres decor, like they kind of have their four guys in their top four: Darlene, Power, Bowen Byram, and then Matthias Samuelsson, who really played well in the playoffs for them. So I think for them, adding some pieces, and they can do it slowly. But I think moving up in the draft, right, going from 27th to 20th, for them is trying to find a piece that's maybe a forward. Like maybe there's a guy up front for the Sabres that they see kind of fitting a role and they can go out and get him. So, but I do think what the San Jose Sharks have done is they've done this in a slow growth curve, right? Where you have a lot of pieces, you know, and a lot of cap space with Celebrini to maybe make something happen as you go. And on the back end, there's not a lot of options right now. If you look at their Puckpedia page, you know, you have Orlov, who's your veteran guy now at 34. It seems crazy Orlov's 34. It makes me feel very, very old. And Sam Dickinson at 20, right? And other than that, you're going to have pieces that are going to come in, going to go, and now you have Kesselring. So I think for them, it's going to be an interesting time of Mike Greer if he starts to be a little more aggressive in the way where, you know, where's San Jose going? Because when we look at this Pacific Division, teams are going to continually get better. Now you're trying to keep pace with Anaheim, what they did. I think that was not really, no one predicted Anaheim to be as good as they were this year. So I think for the Sharks, that window of it's San Jose, they never really had, like, they never got a lot of tough love like some other teams did during rebuilds. And I think now that window to win is there. Yeah. And I think there's a lot more pressure on this organization than there was in the last few years.
I think the reason they didn't get the same tough love and the same shit that some of the other organizations have had, because like you had these 2 years of Macklin Celebrini, and I think that has kind of erased some of the old memories of you know, the 2 prior years. You know, they had David Quinn in there. They moved off of him pretty quickly, and the other thing is Macklin didn't have a sophomore slump. He did what he did. Maybe he had a 5-game sophomore slump. If I remember, he started the year kind of like he had 1 point in the first 5 games or something along those lines. And then he went on to make Team Canada. He went on to star for Team Canada, play on the first line. I mean, everything that we saw him do. So I do think, like, I think the next 2 weeks till July 2nd, I think are going to be probably some of the most entertaining 2 weeks of the entire season. Even though free agency is lighter this year, I think the trades that are going to happen, that are going to change cap situations for certain teams, is going to really kind of form July 1. And I think it's going to create a little bit more excitement. It's going to create a little bit more, you know, fireworks for us all to talk about. So the last thing I want to ask you before we go to 365 here and we call it a week, because I meant to ask you this when we were talking about Rod Brind'Amour. I asked, I think, Johnny this question and maybe one of our guests earlier this week. Do you think Rod Brind'Amour should be heavily considered to coach the Canadian team in the next, like, World Cup? And, you know, obviously the Olympics are still some time away, but do you think, like, it's crazy to me that he's not even on that staff? And it's not that staff isn't elite. I mean, John Cooper, Bruce Cassidy, Rick Tocchet. I know I'm forgetting. Pete DeBoer. I mean, I don't know who you're taking off, because those are incredible coaches that all have different roles. But how does Rod Brind'Amour, when we sit here consistently and talk about what a unicorn he is and what he's done, how are we not talking about him as a guy who should have an opportunity to lead Team Canada?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very, very valid point. And again, I think it's just the factor of having him as a figurehead holds value, right? And I think his success with Carolina is built off longevity of getting them to play the right way and understanding the way that they need to play. And I think in a short tournament like, you know, the Olympics or World Cup or anything you go into, I feel like it would be more of a struggle to really put your DNA on a team, right? Like, you're trying to catch a moving train at that point. But I think the factor of just what his demeanor is when he walks into a room holds value. And I think something we haven't really talked about a ton, I think, today is being the head coach doesn't mean you have to be the X's and O's guy.
No,
like,
not at all.
I think sometimes we're like, you know what, you interview in a process and you're like, well, what was it like for a head coach? He's like, well, I just like who I am as a person. I think Rod Brind'Amour is like your facilitator. He is a guy that can understand the room. He has a presence when he walks into it because of his rapport, even now with the Cup with players. And I think that would be a good factor, is just having him as the figurehead. And then you have all these like scientists of the game behind the scenes. And again, something that I joke around with as I coach youth hockey here with my little guy who's 8 and 9 years old, 2017 group. We have like such a good staff. And I always joke around, like, even for us, like just facilitating communication and being vulnerable to understand that, like, I might not know everything, but having people that can see your blind spot. And I think Rod Brindamore would be a great example of that. Like just his presence as a head coach, and then being like, I'm not the power play guy. We have a power play guy. I'm the guy that's the motivator when you walk in the room. So I do think there will be heavy consideration as we move forward. I know we got a long list of coaches and arguments of who would be who, but being a facilitator is like number one job as a head coach, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with all of that completely. There's different types of head coaches. There's different types of assistant coaches. That's why at the end of a game, in the most crucial moments, most of the time, up a goal, down a goal, it's one of the assistant coaches with the whiteboard drawing up the 6-on-4 play, offensively
100%.
or defensively. It's one or the other, because those are delegated positions.
Yeah, 100%. And again, like, it's not like I see people like, it's not that he doesn't know the X's and O's, but I'm saying to get your foot in the door with that long group of coaches, like, I think that his value, Rod Brindamore, is the fact that he's Rod Brindamore. And if he is your head coach and he walks into a room or he comes on the ice for practice, there's like a different presence because he's like seen it, done it, lived it, everything. It's the same idea as like Martin St. Louis and the success he's had in Montreal. Like, it just holds more water when he is the guy coming up to you, telling you what to do. It's the same thing as like when I played in St. Louis for Hitchcock. Like sometimes we get Shaddy on here to tell some stories about Hitch. It falls on deaf ears at times if you haven't lived it, if you haven't been the guy blocking the shot, if you haven't been the guy where it's like when Rod and like Martin St. Louis and these guys that have lived it, not that you have to be that, that's not the end all be all, but that holds a lot of value with players.
Mm-hmm. I also think this too, and like just in the Rod conversation, I don't think Rod is a one-trick pony as far as the structure that he wants his team to play with. Like, I hope, because I'm starting to see like some of the Canes fans are sort of wondering here, like we're not questioning Rod's ability here whatsoever. Just because they've played a man-on-man and just because they've done it a certain way in Carolina forever, you got to realize something. They're pre-scouting everybody they play. So they're looking at what every other team is doing. Rod is probably spending 99% of his day even away from the rink. His kids are older, right? Well, he has the one young kid that he helps coach. That's not exactly accurate, but he's well-versed in plenty of other ways to play the game of hockey. I think he's realized that what's most effective for his group has been this. I believe that if things didn't go well this year for him or whatever, or if he felt like he didn't have the right players, he would have made adjustments. He would have. These guys, like, he is not a one-trick pony, which is where I that's not what Carter and I are saying here. And I think bringing him into that scenario, maybe as an assistant coach to start, just to have him around the players, just his aura, his presence, his intensity, all of those types of things, I think would help Team Canada. Like, you want winners. You want guys that have done it as a player, as a coach, guys that are well respected. I think Rod Brindamore, I'll never forget when Paul Stastny was in Carolina. Him and I were just chatting before the game, and they were in Chicago, and he wasn't playing much, Paulie. It was a different time for him. Like, he had played everywhere. He was one of the smartest players I've ever seen. And he wasn't thrilled about not playing, but at the end of the day, like, he was a good pro about it. And he's like, look, Rod's got his idea about this, and I might not be fitting that right now, but there was still a lot of respect that Paulie had for him, even though he wasn't playing like he thought he should, or like he had even previously in all of his stops. So I think it'll be interesting to see if he gets involved with Team Canada, because I do think, like, you've got this guy that we all literally call a unicorn. Why is he not involved with those teams? And I think it's a question that we'll learn more about here as Team Canada changes their management, obviously with Doug Armstrong stepping down and so on and so forth. So Ian 4109 Huts is asking us to address Sportsnet. obviously some changes to the Canadian TV landscape. I don't know if that's something you want to shine some light into or give some color to. I am not really prepared to address that personally because I don't fully know enough about it. I've lived in the US my whole life for the most part. So I don't know the structure of Canadian television and between CBC and Rogers and this or that. So I don't know if you want to add a little bit of color or context, or, I've seen this in the chat a couple of times.
Yeah, so it's kind of a big time change in the market. Not that I'm an expert on this by any means, but CBC is funded by the government, right? So it's a free Saturday night hockey. You're going to watch Hockey Night in Canada on there. Now that Sportsnet owns it, it's going to be owned by that. You're going to have to be able to have a package or Sportsnet Plus to watch TV. And the fact that the Hockey Night in Canada header and everything that goes with it will be gone. So Sportsnet would have to rebrand it. So it's a big change and something that's been like a mainstay for I think 75 years in Canada. Hockey Night in Canada, so pretty much free games Saturday night. So it's a big change, and I think it's just like the corporate structure of Sportsnet taking over is a big shock to the system. The fact that now the free TV is gone, it's a greedy organization that's going to take over. I think that's people's opinions of it now, where it's changed, where CBC was always a stable, and it kind of sucks because it is funded by the government. There's a lot of money that's pumped into it. It's something that probably should have stayed in there. It's like as Canadian as maple syrup is, buddy, what I'm having on my pancakes after this show.
I first learned about Hockey Night in Canada when I went to Roger Nielsen's camp, because there was a presentation at Roger Nielsen's camp when I was kids, and I've talked about how lucky I was with the relationships that my dad had with Roger Nielsen, and that I got to actually stay at Roger's house, his lake house up in Lindsay, Ontario, in between the weeks. Like, we would do camp during the week, and then my older brother and I would stay at Roger's house on the weekend, which was really cool. We did it for a couple of weeks, but I'll never forget. There was a Rock'em Sock'em presentation about Hockey Night in Canada from Don Cherry, and there was like a big video they played on the screen, and then Don Cherry actually came out, and everyone was like, but I didn't really know who he was, being an American kid. Like, we didn't have access to that. Most of the kids at this camp were Canadian. It was like they were meeting the damn president when Don Cherry came out, when we were like peewee aged kids, 9, 10, 11, 12, like all in that age range. So that was when I first learned about Hockey Night in Canada. Obviously, I know more about it now. And I've got to meet some of the great people that are involved in Hockey Night in Canada, or have been. So we appreciate you, Huts, for giving a little bit of clarity to that. Also, great having you today. I think if we learned anything, based on today's numbers, based on today's chat, and based on today's show, it's Carter Hutton's pretty good on Morning Cuppa Hockey. So I guess our pal could take more days at parades if he wants. We know Johnny the activist likes to get involved, so he's got to, maybe he needs to build more parades and things into his busy work schedule. So last order of business is today's part of today's show is brought to you by Out West. And whether you're heading to the course, the office, or just out for the day, Out West delivers premium polos, quarter zips, and everyday performance wear built for comfort and style. Gear up with apparel that works wherever life may take you. Check them out at www.outwest.us. Use the code CUPPA for 25% off your first order. That's right. We upped it to 25%. And remember, every game needs an outlaw. And look, Huts, I don't know if you have any Out West stuff. And if you don't, we need to change that. I live in these hoodies. Like, I do not put these on for the show. But when I wake up in the morning, my house is freezing cold in the summer. Freezing cold. I put the air conditioning down to 62 in the summer. I mean, we keep it nice and cold. And so I'm always in a hoodie and sweatpants to start my day, even when it's hot out. And I live in these things, man. If you're a golfer, it's almost a travesty not to be rocking these things. So not only are they a good sponsor for us, they've been with us since the beginning. And like I said, we'll talk to Wes and get you hooked up a little bit here, Huts, because he's really good about that stuff. But it's not just that they're a sponsor. I mean, you guys have seen me on other shows across. When I come on your show, I usually still have it on. Jeff, I love this stuff. It really is. These hoodies, and the quarter zips. Those are my favorite two. They fit true to size. The fabric is next level. So we'll get you taken care of, and we'll get you some good out west stuff. So excuse me. So one more order of business today. We still have to give you our bet of the day, which is a presentation of Bet365. And every sports fan will tell you that not all games are created equal. Sometimes the excitement just isn't there. Sometimes you get a dud. It does happen. But at Bet365, boring games are a thing of the past. Now you've always got a reason to tune in, even if it's the score isn't one of them. And while they can't make every game exciting, they can help fans get excited about every game. Bet365. Download the app today. Must be 19 years of age or older. And as you guys know, I'm not always Mr. Pick'em here. Usually we leave that up to Johnny here. So Vic helped us out today. And what we're going to go with is the Toronto Marlies to complete the sweep and win the Calder Cup tonight, -140. They are currently up 3-0 against the Chicago Wolves. So it does look like the great country of Canada is finally going to win something at hockey, Huts. I mean, who would have thunk it? A trophy coming back to Toronto? Really?
I love it. I love it. Things are looking good. Like you go from the Leafs team that was just squandered during the playoffs and watching Mitch Marner going to win a Stanley Cup. And all of a sudden you get the first overall pick. Marner doesn't win the cup. And now you have potential to win a Calder Cup, which is no joke. And the success of their goalie right now has been unbelievable. I think that's a big reason why we saw the trade yesterday with Joseph Wall is like the confidence and Arthur Arkhimoff, how good he's been. And he can play well. Easton Cowan has been a beast in the playoffs. I think that's another important factor for the big Toronto Maple Leafs. And it's a good factor. I like the under in this game too, Vic. I like this pick. Job, Vic. He got my pick. A sweep for the Calder Cup. That if you win the Calder Cup in a sweep, there's a good chance you win the Stanley Cup real soon.
Will Toronto celebrate? Like, how much will Toronto rally around this? I know the Marlies draw pretty well, and obviously people in Canada go crazy for hockey. Like we say, Toronto is the mecca. But will there be like a big parade? Like, will 500,000, 1 million people go? Like, I'm not saying that. I'm not. By the way, I'm not being sarcastic. Like, I'm truly curious. Like, how Sharma, let us know. Like, I know you're in the chat today. Any other Leafs fans, like, how will this be received in Canada? Is this something we're going to be seeing? Is it going to be covered? Is it going to be handled? Or is it just kind of something that not that many people care about?
Yeah, no, I people care about it, but not to the extent of the Stanley Cup. It's still held in less regard, like in that sense. Yeah. But it's still obviously something that, I don't think there would be a parade. There'd probably be the celebration in each player's pocket community, and there'd be a big draw tonight. But other than that, I can't say I know what's going to happen in that sense.
And their head coach, John Gruden, a name that kind of continues to be out there, right? I mean, I think a lot of people thought maybe he should have been a serious candidate for the Leafs job. Sheldon Keefe came through the Marlies organization, and others have as well. So Huts, listen, man, I really appreciate you jumping on today. Obviously, you've got your show at noon with Tyler. Anything in particular we should be expecting on Daily Faceoff Live today?
We're breaking down the goalie market today. We're going to go through, it's kind of a goalie show, so I got to be on my toes here today. I got some numbers to crunch and some conversations. We're going to talk Bobrovsky and Binnington, Hellebuck, Aiden Hill will come up. And then we have Kevin Woodley on from In Goal Magazine, who's like the guy, knows everything. So it should be a lot of fun. I think we're going to break down kind of Brandon Bussey and Carter Hart, what went wrong, what went right in that series as well. So it should be a great show.
All right, so tune in at noon for Daily Faceoff Live, 1 p.m. The Sheet. Make sure you like today's episode. Make sure we get a subscribe to the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We continue to climb. We continue to get closer to the draft. We continue to get closer to free agency, so the content is not going to stop. We will continue to do our live shows. Give us a like, as we said. Comment on the YouTube stream when the show's over. If you're not live YouTube, but you come later and you want to kind of get involved with the chat, leave us a comment on the stream. Go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, all the places you can download shows via audio. Get your audio versions ready. Listen, we've got July 4th coming up, a lot of different holidays through the summer. People travel, a lot of road trips. So you've got a good opportunity to listen to the audio version if you can't make the YouTube. So keep downloading that show. We are so close. By the end of next week, I think we're going to hit the massive milestone that I have been hinting on, that we have been working towards this season. And when that happens, we will let you know. But download, and download some more. Hutsy, great filling in today. Great working with you today in a little bit of a different, less structured forum, I think we could call it. Maybe we'll ask Johnny to take next week off as well. I certainly wouldn't mind that. And we'll be calling you for some more help. So I hope you have a great day. Chat, I hope you guys have a great day. Long weekend for the Morning Cuppa Hockey crew. No show tomorrow. Back to 4 days a week. So we hope you all have a great weekend. We hope it's filled with fireworks in the hockey world. And we will see everybody at 9 a.m. Monday morning.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to Morning Cuppa Hockey here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. And don't forget, we've got more great hockey content every day. You can catch DFO live at noon and stick around for the Sheet with Jeff Marek at 1 p.m. right here on Daily Faceoff. Until then, keep your coffee hot and your takes hotter.